Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Kim Porter. I'm the Executive Director of Be a Part of the Conversation. Really glad to have you with us for this terrific panel this evening. As I said, I'm with Be a Part of the Conversation. We're celebrating 10 years of programming this year, and we are hosted tonight by the Chester County Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. Thank you to Chester County. We are in 5 counties in this Philadelphia region, and Chester, Bucks, Montgomery, Philadelphia, and Delaware counties. So thank you, Chester County. I wanted to introduce you to Judy Hirsch. Oh God, I didn't change your title again, Judy.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. Judy's our Director of Community Engagement. And she's been with us for 3 years, and she used to be the program director, but we all wear a lot of hats in a small organization like this. Please feel free to submit questions during the program as Rick is speaking or as Pam and Bill are speaking. We will keep track of those. So Judy and I will keep an eye and make sure that if your question hasn't been answered, we'll get to it as best we can. We also received some advanced questions that were submitted during registration, and we're going to try to get to those as well. We had some really wonderful things that were brought up. We are recording this program. We're really glad you're with us live, though, because I think it's great to have as much interaction as possible. So please, as I said, do submit questions. But if you want to share this later with someone, we will be posting this on our follow-up page, conversation.zone/parents. So you can stay tuned for that. It won't be loaded until tomorrow morning, though, because it takes a while to process. At the end of this program, you'll see a survey pop up when the program ends. We really would appreciate you taking just a few moments to fill that out. It helps us so much to know how you felt about the program, what you might like to see in the future, any feedback that you might have for us. Even if you've attended these programs before, it really is helpful to us to hear your feedback. So thank you for that in advance. Just a few things that are coming up we wanted to make you aware of. This coming Tuesday, we'll be presenting this program that we actually just did again recently. We'll have different speakers, different presenters this time. This is this coming Tuesday, the rising tide of stimulants. You may have just heard the JAMA report that came out, Journal of American Medical Association report, citing some real concerns about the increase in methamphetamine use. But we'll also be talking about Adderall and other prescribed amphetamines, stimulants. We'll talk about cocaine and as I said, methamphetamines, crystal meth, that sort of thing. We'll have with us Dr. Greg Hobelman from Ashley Treatment Center, and we'll also have someone who's in recovery from the addiction to methamphetamine. That's this coming Tuesday. You can register for that at convo.zone/bucks. Also next week, we have 2 in-person programs at our office in Ardmore. This is part of our Creative Recovery series, which you can learn more about at conversation.zone/creative. Judy is, give her a little time because I sprung a couple on these on her, but she'll be putting some of these links in the chat. You can find, again, all of this on our website. But Wednesday night, we'll be doing a creative writing workshop with Eric Tankel. That'll be part 1 of 2. And then on Thursday, we're going to have a music workshop with Daniel Bononis, who is a music therapist. This does not require any skills. Oh, hey, Rick, you might want to mute yourself if you're still there. So please join us, learn more about it there. You do not need to be a musician or a writer. It's just a way to deepen recovery, whether you're a person with a substance use disorder in recovery, or if you're a family member like I am, like Pam and Bill are. Please think about joining us. If you've been fully vaccinated, we are making that requirement. So we hope that you can be with us. On October 5th, we have a program called Out of Isolation and Into Recovery. This has been a very, very challenging time for folks with a substance use disorder. So we want to talk about how to kind of break free from that isolation, seek recovery, and sustain it. So we'll have some folks from Montgomery County with us on October 5th. There's a lot more coming, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you about what's on the horizon. Just again, invite you to visit our calendar on this section of our website so that you can see what is ahead, and you can find registration information there as well. And tonight, especially, I think it's important to talk about this part of our organization, which is called Parent Partnership. These are meetings that have been taking place throughout the region for some time. Here is to kind of give you a nice idea of where these meetings were taking place pre-pandemic. A couple of them were still meeting in person, but most of them are actually on Zoom right now. But what's really especially meaningful tonight is that Pam Roberts, who is with us along with her husband, Bill, is our new parent partnership coordinator. You're going to learn a lot about Pam's background and her personal history tonight, but she is helping us to kind of keep all of these meetings synced up and working together and supporting the leaders of these groups. And this part of that, part of our website has all the specific details about all those meetings. The green buttons are on Zoom, the purple buttons are in person, and there's one meeting in red that is hybrid. But you can learn a lot more about that when you visit these pages on our website. So part of what Pam and Bill have also given to the community of family members in recovery is this series of manuals called Standing in the Storm. You can find those on our website as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and get us moving so that you can hear from this amazing panel. We're going to start with Rick Shugart, who is a marriage and family therapist. Thank you so much, Rick. Go right ahead.
Welcome. And hopefully this will be one of the last virtual presentations, because I really do love speaking to an audience so I can make eye contact, although I don't mind looking at Kim and she's my audience for the night. My name is Rick Shugart. I've been a marriage and family therapist specializing with families in crisis, especially addiction and mental health issues for about 26 years, and worked in the recovery field my whole career, but in an outpatient setting at Belmont's dual diagnosis setting. And I worked at Karen Foundation as director of marketing. And I put together a parent lecture series that I've been doing for over 10 years. So tonight, when Kim invited me, there were some questions that came up, and I could give a talk on almost every topic. It could be a whole talk, but tonight we want to cover a lot. So the two things I want to cover tonight, and then hopefully that'll answer a lot of the questions that were asked, are I want to talk about the path for recovery for the person who doesn't have the addiction and what self-care looks like for them. And the other side of it is to change your formation of everything we do is an intervention, and I'll get clear in that. I mean, so we all know about intervention of the type where you hire someone, they come to the house and everybody reads letters and they confront them. We've seen these things on TV, sometimes dramatic. There were shows called Intervention, but everything is an intervention, including parts of the stuff I'll talk to when we get to self-care. So the part is, if you have someone in your life who's suffering, whether it's a child, a parent, a partner, a friend, a sibling, the first thing you need to do is really get your own support. There's two recoveries going on. I always look at the person. If they choose to get in recovery, there is beginner recovery, there is therapy, there's rehab, there's 12-step meetings, there's group therapy, and then they're on a process to hopefully maintain a life in recovery and then grow. For the spouses, partners, parents, they have different kind of work because they've been doing a dance around the addicted person, often for many years, sometimes decades. And they don't know their part in it. And I don't mean part meaning a part that caused any of it. I mean your part in how I get stuck in a dynamic I don't want to be in. Which brings us to the first thing is, we're talking about loved ones of people with addicts. This is not a blaming thing. There's no bashing here. There's no right or wrong. But what we do want to look at and try and tease out is, I'm not here to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm interested in helping you figure out what's effective and what's ineffective. And to understand this concept that enabling doesn't cause addiction, but it can prolong it. And then to understand it's a multi-layer problem, because if you have someone in your life who's suffering, it is not just addiction and that's it. It's also people have mental health issues. They have, depending on the age, they could have delayed development to being mature. They could have some character problems. They could have mental health, mood disorders. They could have learning disabilities. There's many factors that go into how they evolved into that addiction. So one of the things about for people who have someone in their life is looking at, and if any of you are familiar with Al-Anon, that's great. If you haven't, I would certainly start reading up on it or attempt a meeting or support, because the recovery purpose for someone in Al-Anon is to be eventually happy, joyous, and free. So I always say there's two continuums going on. There's the continuum for the recovery person between using and then getting sober and having a life. And then there is the recovery program for how do I get healthy and out of this dynamic and help the person who's suffering, but not get caught up and have it ruin my life. So I have to move towards health regardless of where the other person is. And that seems, for some people, they feel guilty. Some people, it's hard to move on. So when we get caught up in the dynamic, and that can mean anything. Certainly a parent and child dynamic is different than a partner. It's different than having a parent who's older or aging. And it's different than having a sibling where they have their own family. And so I want to talk about things you can do, but first you want to understand your part. So one of the things we have to accept, and this is the hardest thing of all, when a person with a substance abuse has to eventually confront and realize that I am powerless over this drug, it has made my life unmanageable. They're on their way to hopefully a path to recovery. What's much harder is when I realize I'm powerless over a person. It's not in our language. We don't use that. That doesn't mean I'm not powerless over my choices, over my decisions, over what I say, how I intervene, how I help, how I have boundaries, but I am ultimately powerless over what they do. So one of the hardest concepts to, accept is, at some level, when we're talking about helping people in your life or supporting them or intervening, is I can do my part. I can't control the outcome. And that is really crappy sometimes, but that is as healthy as it gets sometimes. But again, realize we're not powerless over our choices and decisions, and when we accept these things and we start to look at the concept of what 12-step has to offer, it's easier to accept you're powerless over, my eating or certain foods or drinking or gambling. It's because it's a thing. That's much harder with people because they're complex. And I can't just remove them. I can remove certain foods and alcohol and things in my life that are unhealthy. I can't remove people. And yet there are other times when I actually can remove people. And realize, how do I get to restore to some sanity? Which always is, the short answer is to not do this in isolation. When you work in isolation, you're in a vacuum. So absolutely part of any recovery process, regardless of what program or who's in your life, is not to do it in isolation. To get feedback, you get to, and share, you get to normalize what's going on. You get to understand what I'm going through. You get to feel heard and validated. And that can restore us to at least having a peace of mind or understanding something differently. And then being able to accept that I can do my part, and I will go to great lengths to do my part, but I ultimately cannot control the outcome. So if you have someone in your life who's using, some of the things is, well, how do you intervene? So I wanted to talk a little bit about interventions, is that everything is an intervention. Yes, if it's a dramatic case where someone is, hitting rock bottom, and there's the 5 bottoms that bring people to recovery are legal bottoms, medical bottoms, marital bottoms, work bottoms, money bottoms. And when people are crashing, yes, we definitely intervene. And then depending on how far they are in their addiction and how harmful they are, that could lead to cause more problems, ill health, and God forbid, relapse or death. So, but everything is an intervention. So having an open conversation, speaking your truth, having a family session with people, sometimes having a boundary, sometimes being clear of what I will do and what I won't do, sometimes offering help and say, let me know when you're ready. Like every one of those is an intervention, whether it comes from a friend, a parent, a child, Now, certain instances you have more power. So if you're dealing with a young adult or an adolescent, you have a lot more power over their lives because you have more choices. I can make choices about car privileges and money and living here and college. And that sometimes is a good incentive, and other times that doesn't work either. With a partner, that's really a whole different story because you don't have that kind of power over somebody. You only have power over your choices or what you're willing to do. So, and less so with a parent, and unless, of course, they're dependent on you. So the first thing I want to look at is what enabling is the enabling theory implies that if you let someone hit bottom, they will make the addict want to go to recovery. And that is a great theory. It is not always true. It's true a lot of times, but often stopping enabling is just that, just stopping enabling. I may make your addiction harder for you. You may have to have some consequences. Doesn't mean they're going to turn around and get sober. So I need you to get that clear that enabling is not causing and it's not going to cure. It can promote a family or personal dependence and dysfunctional coping skills for both people involved, whether it's rescuing, whether it's bailing out, whether it's listening to the over explanations and some of the dishonesty or lies or manipulations. So enabling in that way does promote dysfunctional coping skills. And you have to accept it. Sometimes I can do all the right things, that I've listened to people, I got good sound advice, I'm finally realizing what's healthy for me to do and healthy for the person. I can do all the right things and have great outcomes, and I can have painful outcomes. That doesn't mean I have to be part of the dysfunction. And then some people don't do anything right and they get sober kids. So it is really a big continuum of how things work out in life. But enabling does affect us, that we become resentful, we become anxious, we can become angry, we can become betrayed, we can feel alone, we can feel a little crazy that we're caught up in what seems like unreality at times, because I'm sure if you have someone in your life, you've heard a lot of wild stories or explanations that anywhere else in the world would not be logical, but when you hear them from a person in your life, they're very good because their goal, if they're in their addiction, is to really hold on to that. They don't want to lose that yet. So how do we have self-care? The biggest thing you have to do with self-care is really you need to, the first and single most thing is you need to talk to other people who are also involved. Now, whether you get that from a therapist, a group, your church, Al-Anon, parent support group, that is the very first thing. I need information about this. Otherwise, you're working in a vacuum. And believe me, if you get any one of those sources, you will at least feel heard and realize that what you're experiencing is not new. You're not alone in it. That's the first step of getting help. I'm not alone. Okay. Secondly, when you talk to other people and get out of your head, you get to realize things that you can let go of confront some of the shame or blame issues you may be experiencing. You know, if only I had done this. Well, I should have done this then. And thinking that you had more control over a situation than you have. For certainly your kids and certainly for marriages, when you finally look at this stuff and get support, you can allow yourself, it's okay to have some sadness and feel grief or loss over the hopes and dreams that you had that didn't turn out the way because addiction took us on a different path. You know, so grief and loss is not always about that. It's about, with our kids, we had plans that we'd have a nice house and they go to college and, you know, they get married someday. And that path just gets really on a strange curvy thing when there's addiction and or recovery. And the same for marriage. We have plans in our head of what it'll look like each decade, and addiction can take us on a different path. And hopefully recovery puts us back on, but we don't make up for lost time. And the other thing is to be honest about the addiction. When you find people who can relate and you trust, saying it out loud is one of the most healing things in the world. And often people keep it inside for a long time with their children, with their siblings. We don't talk about it. And when you do, there's always a great relief. And it's also a way to, when you choose to be honest with people in your life, you kind of know right away who's concerned, who cares, and who is not interested. And that is sometimes a big blow. I've had a lot of parents who don't want to talk to other parents because the question is going to come up, where's your kids going to college? And they know my son's in recovery and that's going to come out. So they avoid relationships. And yet when they go to support meetings, they feel free to say whatever they want because it's less judgment, you know? Okay, so when we talk about, how do I help someone and focus on my own life? The first thing I put out there is when you're talking to someone with who has addiction in your life, I'm a real big proponent of being a straight shooter. And one of the theories, or the things I pulled over the life that I've heard, is to be congruent. And by congruent, I mean what you think and what you feel is what you express. So I can't tell you how many times parents or loved ones tell me, well, I'm thinking he's lying to me. And I'm feeling like this mistrust in here. And I'm like, sure, you can use the car. And you can see where those three things are not in sync. And then we walk away feeling kind of crappy or guilty or anxious or worried. The other way is if I'm in sync with all those three things, I'm thinking this person may be manipulating. I'm feeling a sense of uneasiness. And I say, no, you can't have the car. Now, I may have to deal with their anger or disappointment, but I'm being true to myself. So that's going to be an overarching theme when I say to be a straight shooter. There's nothing that you can't not say to someone who has addiction that deep down they don't already know. They could be defensive. They could deny it. Don't forget their power base that has worked in their lives, whether they're a child or an adult, is to deny it, to rationalize it, to over-explain it, to change the subject, to manipulate, to flat out lie, to cause a fight and shut down. There's many coping skills that someone with addiction will use, and you've been caught up in that. So ways to intervene is, the first thing is to be a straight shooter. And I don't care if that's a parent, a child, or a partner. It's meaning you find the time when you have gotten some support to actually sit down. And this is the first intervention. I always tell people the first intervention is when you talk to your family. Like, all right, we have to talk about, your drinking or your drug use or this thing that's going on. And you might get a blowback, you might get things, but you did it anyway. I just put it out there that this is no longer invisible. It's not the elephant in the room. I just said it out loud. So the first intervention is conversations. The second conversation might be things like, we can't go on like this anymore. We have to come up with a solution. Still nothing, then I'm going to get support from friends, support groups or therapists, and then realize what kind of choices are best for me, because they're different for each person. So when you have a child, it's easy to say, look, I can't make you get sober, and be real honest with that. Can't even make you go to rehab, but I can make sure you never get behind the wheel of a car. I'm not going to give you money if you're using drugs and alcohol, and I will support healthy behavior, not supporting dysfunction. With a partner, that's different, because I may have to start doing some things on my own. I'm not going to you in events if you're going to be intoxicated. I'm not getting behind the wheel of a car when a partner is drinking. And I may be leaving a couple nights to get some support for myself. I want you to get help with me, go to therapy, but again, it's not doing it alone. So those first conversations are the biggest intervention. I'm not saying they're successful, but they're important for you to get them out, because my reality is now out loud. Otherwise, that subtle kind of thing we call enabling allows the person to think, oh, I got away with it again. Oh, it's not that much of a problem. Oh, she's just complaining, or he's just complaining again. And if it's a kid, they think they got away with it because you didn't call me out on it this time. So the first way to confront is to be a straight shooter and talk about it. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing you can't say that they don't already know. And that's powerful for you, and it's powerful for them. The second thing to do is to realize what, if anything, I'm doing that is actually feeling bad and hurting them or me. So the big things are like, obviously, people behind the wheel of a car if they're intoxicated or using. Obviously, it's money. If I'm bailing you out and you're spending your money on drugs and alcohol, well, then I'm really spending money on drugs and alcohol with you. If it's, I keep sparing you from hitting some kind of mini bottom or small bottom, and it's more work on me, they don't see the problem in it, and I'm allowing them to believe they can manage this more than they can. Those are forms of enabling that are not helpful. And everybody's got to look differently because we all enable in different ways. And it's not about there's a set thing of advice like, oh, don't do this. Everyone's got to figure out what they're doing. Sometimes listening to people go on about their problem and getting sucked into it, that's a form of enabling. I'm listening to a problem and you're talking about the problem, but the problem really is drugs and alcohol. And I let you go on and we're changing the subject. So there's many different ways I can start to enable and not hold you accountable. So the ways to intervene is be a straight shooter. The second thing is to get support for yourself and realize that even if I stop enabling, that is for the benefit of them so that they have to figure things out, possibly even hit bottom. But the real benefit is myself, that I don't feel that I'm sucked into a dynamic that is not helpful. And that requires you have to be willing to have the person be angry with you. And that's where I really need support. If you stop enabling with kids or parents or partners, very often they will shut down, they will pout, they will get angry, and it feels really crappy. And if you don't have support, you could fall back into the same dynamic just to make things a little better. When you have your own support, you realize, oh, these things are normal. This is what all people are going through when you have someone with substance abuse in your life. So the ways to self-care are absolutely always say it out loud, always get support from other people. And then I like to look at is, where do I lose my power? And power is a psychological term for a dynamic I'm in. I lose my power when I buy into your story, when I let you manipulate me, when I let you wear me down, when I let you you cry and I just feel bad for you and I give in. There's a million different ways that we lose our power and give in to someone and then feel guilty because we know we shouldn't have done that. So that's a piece where I have to, again, be talking to a therapist or somebody who's been through this to understand what is it I do that is harmful to me and not helpful for them. And obviously, it's harder depending on who they are. When you're your parents, it's really hard. But that doesn't mean I can't come up with my own consequences for the problem. I've had clients who have shared more things in my lifetime, in my career, that I've used as examples. That I had a client who she was in recovery and her parents were still addicted and they were well into their 70s and it was not very pretty. And the best she could do after talking, intervening, trying it, going to therapy, was to accept that she could have breakfast with them at the diner in the morning before they had drinks. And that was as good as it got. They were not willing to stop. That was their choice. She had to watch it, but she didn't have to be over their house when they're drinking. She didn't have to talk to them at night. So her solution was I want to stay engaged with them, but I'm not doing the dance. That's obviously different when you have a kid and you're still responsible for their well-being and their education and not letting them fall through the cracks. And different with a spouse. It depends on the nature of the intervention. There can be interventions about obviously driving. There can be interventions about our relationship. There is, for some people, the talk of separation often can help people realize there's a bigger problem. There's going to marital therapy. But there's finally having real conversations that I can't make you stop drinking, but I can let you know how it affects me and what it does to our life. And like I said, there's nothing you can't say that the other person doesn't know at some level. One of the biggest intervention questions I've asked the person who has substance abuse, and it's a great question that they teach in the training, is when did you know this was a problem? So you're already assuming they know, you're already assuming they're aware, and they always answer it. they'll say, oh yeah, I know it was a problem like 6 years ago, 10 years ago. So they know, they're just not ready to say it out loud because their coping skills has been to how to survive with work, career, relationships, and keep their addiction alive. And it's harder when they're able to do that. They can function at work, but their relationships are falling apart. So one of the things that really we have to do is to realize that when I can support, it's figuring out for each person what enabling is, what is support and accountability. And to realize that tough love, which is a term from the 70s, it still gets tossed around, is not cutting someone off. They may be mad at you and it feels like a cutoff, but I'm just not engaging in, I'm really not engaging in the dysfunction. So, you know, I have to let people often, and this is the hardest part, I can intervene on several different ways. And then at the end of the day, I have to let go of the things like trying to micromanage because it doesn't work if they're not willing to stop the addiction or the substance abuse. I have to give them the opportunity to succeed or fail because what I'm doing isn't helping them see the light. And I have to have clear expectations so they at least know where I'm coming from and what I'm willing to do or not to do. I always use some humorous anecdotal stuff. You know, in my generation, when I was a kid, if we got caught drinking, which we did, our parents guaranteed put you on punishment for a good 2 weeks. You were in, and it was, you know, it was painful back then because there was no social media or television. It did not make us stop drinking. So the consequence, even though it was swift and it was clear and it felt crappy, did not make us stop. Did it make us better sneaks? Possibly. Did it make us make sure we sobered up a little before we went home? Possibly. But it didn't end. So having a consequence didn't make us see the light and get sober. Some of the kids didn't want to drink and they got better and moved on with life. And the ones who had addiction had to go through their addiction until they're ready to get sober. But those parents who had that kind of thing, they were setting a tone as, I'm not going to tolerate this. And they made it very clear. So back in my day, if you were still pulling that stuff after high school at 18, it was time to move out. So back then, they were just doing natural interventions of, I love you, but you ain't living here. And I think the term we used to use was, this isn't a flop house, was a big common phrase in our day. But that was our parents saying that was their way of doing intervention. We know a lot more about addiction now. We know that it's a brain chemistry illness. And we know how it affects cravings, and we know how it affects you psychologically with distorted thinking and justification. And it's crazy making behavior when you're caught in it with someone you love. And this other big piece is really hard. I want to believe them. I don't want to think that the person I am in a marriage with or a parent or a kid is lying to me. And yet that if you're in somebody with an addict, that is part of it. The other thing with addiction is it's not just the addiction. Like I said, you know, when we look at people with addiction, very high, it's got like a 70% rate of people who have mood disorders, people who have mental health, people who have anger management problems, ADD, sexual abuse histories. Like there are other things other than the addiction, but we don't get anywhere until we address the addiction first. So when I talk about self-care, it means not living in that vacuum. Reclaiming your life includes things like, I need to stop talking about the addict and talk about more what I want for my life. It means getting support and allow myself to feel heard and understood and possibly some camaraderie or joy. It definitely requires education. I can't reclaim my power without education on what to do because it's not a cookie cutter approach for every family. I love Al-Anon as a concept and a theory, but I do think it's great for support, education, whether you're reading it online or meetings. To reclaim your power and not get caught up in the dysfunction of an addictive relationship means you have to be willing to be anxious. It's not fun work. When you have a boundary or a consequence, people will not be nice to you sometimes. You have to be willing to be anxious. You can't do it alone. You need friends. Doesn't mean every friend has to be in recovery, but people who understand. and can support you when you're making tough decisions. You have to, a good thing with people when we get caught up in a dysfunctional dynamic with someone with addiction is get used to never answering in the moment. It just goes down the rabbit hole, especially if I'm talking to someone who's being defensive, who's already started drinking, who's picking a fight, who's trying to wear me down. Just don't answer in the moment and you'll have a lot less regret instead of walking away thinking I shouldn't have done that, or it gives me a time to reflect or get feedback from someone else. Two other big things that happen or need it when you have an addicted person in your life is to get feedback and reflect. And when you're caught in the moment, it's always a strategy just to I need to regroup and get away from it. I need to get where I get sounded and feel grounded with people who understand this. If you're in a parent support group, they understand absolutely what it's like. For all the things that adolescents and young adults can do when they want to keep using and have your support. And that's different for a spouse when you have someone who, I don't have the marriage I want, but I don't want a divorce. And I want to make it better. And I can only do so much work, but I need support to know what I'm going through. And when we have parents, it's even harder because I certainly, can't make them get sober if they have their own means, but it could mean I have to accept a different kind of relationship, which may be a part of a loss. And that also changes with aging parents when they're dependent on you and there's still addiction, So I look at being really clear with your expectations of what you're willing to do. And, certainly that means for young adults, it's easy. I'm not paying for school. I'm not putting behind a car. I'm not giving you money. I'm only supporting healthy behavior. With a partner, you have to be clear of your expectations of what you're going to be doing differently. If they're going to be involved in their substance abuse, you feel free to say, look, I won't be here for dinner 3 nights a week. I have support groups I need to go to. And that's part of your self-care. And then when we get to self-care, it's despite where the person in your life is suffering, the things you want to focus on after I do what I can is how do I make plans with people where my life is not revolved around someone who has an addiction? When do I make time for friends? Because I can always get caught up in what somebody needs, especially if I'm in a kind of a rescue kind of a dysfunction. Where do I get my intellectual stimulation to talk about things other than problems? What hobbies and interests have gone by the wayside because there's no time for it when I always have a busy life and I'm trying to manage around someone who's using. But it all starts with going back to being congruent and having the first intervention, which is just talking and telling them where you are, not asking about where they are, telling them where you are. And, I like the philosophy of some of my choices is going to allow them to succeed or fail. I'm not trying to make them hit bottom because hitting bottom is a theory that's going to make them want recovery. And that's not always true. We have research that people get out of prison, which I would think would be the ultimate bottom. And yet they can use the day they get out and violate their probation. So hitting bottom is a theory. It works a lot of time, but you never know what someone's bottom is. It could be emotional. It just could be dramatic. It could be, God forbid, car accidents or legal problems. And other times it's just people feeling sick and tired and their world's falling apart. And spouses are a big part of helping them hit bottom when they see that you're moving on and not buying into this dynamic, when you take care of yourself better. With adolescents, they learn that life is going to be very different if they're not willing to change their behavior, because I'm not supporting this. And it may be at some point inviting your kids to move out. That's the way I like to put it, as opposed to throwing them out. And I'm trying to be careful of time because I know we got to. So what works for the addict, I don't want to spend as much time what works for them. I want to focus more on what we can do. And, once I get out of the isolation, then I'm ready to figure out how many more interventions are necessary. talking to them, being a straight shooter, getting support from parents or Al-Anon to know what further interventions I can do about what I need to say to my partner, parent, or child, going to a therapist to get guidance on how to stop enabling and what's enabling in my particular family. And all those do require to have support, because if you do this, you start to reclaim your life, and you could feel anxious because the other person are not happy. But at least we can start to become what I call happy, joyous, and free, that regardless where they are, I know I'm doing my part and I'm not going to be stuck in anxiety, rescuing and trying to fix something that I don't have control over. So there are some of the topics I want to put out: self-care. So really the thing with intervention is speak your mind. You have nothing to lose. There's plenty of ways to do that. You can't do this in isolation. It's essential that you have support so you feel normalized in what you're doing. Learn to get rid of your own shame and guilt that you may be feeling dealing with someone who has addiction in your family. And that's how you start to reclaim your life. And interventions are a series. We could go, they might talk to my family. We might get the whole family to talk. We might see a therapist outpatient. We might have the big intervention. Could be a whole series of things. But all the while I'm starting to take care of myself. So that's at the 7:45 mark. I tried to squeeze a lot in there for a half hour. So I'll turn it back to Kim so she can direct us for the rest of the program.
Awesome. That was really helpful. Thank you so much, Rick. I already have some follow-up questions, but I'm going to hold off on that because we have Pam and Bill coming up next.
Okay.
Pam and Bill are, well, I'll let you guys tell our audience who you are. But thank you for being here. And thank you again, Rick.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead. You go first.
I go first. Okay. I'm really glad that this has been recorded, because Rick just gave you a lot of information, and I'm telling you, he is a straight shooter. He tells it exactly like it is. And one of the things that we strongly recommend to just about everybody we work with and we see in our parent groups is that there are some issues and some things that need professional help. So please don't feel like you're being directed to immediately go to a therapist, but we found that therapists can be extremely helpful. When Rick gave you an education to those things, putting them into practice sometimes requires that getting out of the isolation, being with other people, being with a therapist, somebody who can help show you the way. That being said, my name is Bill. I'm an alcoholic. I'm in recovery 16 years. And I learned that it was very difficult to get sober. And then I learned that it's impossible to get somebody else sober. I have some control and some ability to live my own life, but I can't impact someone else's addiction easily. There's 3 C's that they talk about in Al-Anon. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. But we know as parents, at least, that there's a 4th one in which you can contribute to making it better, making it worse, and learning what those things are so that you have some impact. Where you can't control it, you can't cure their problem, you can contribute to making things better or worse. And the most important one is for you to get better yourself, because I believe that parents and other family members suffer from PTSD as a result of prolonged exposure to a loved one who's going through addiction. And we need help. We need help with what happens to us. Our journey started about, God knows, 27 years ago, something like that. With a son who started having emotional issues, in middle school. So we dove into trying to fix him, and that went on for many years, and things just got worse. So we have 3 kids, and all 3 have had their bouts with drug and alcohol use. And I will tell you that 27 years later, our life is fantastic. We've got kids that are productive and loving. We've got 2 grandchildren. We've gone through a lot of heartache and stuff to get here, but today, let me just tell you that there's a lot of hope. Parents should know that it's not all terrible. It's bad when you're in the middle of it, but and you're watching someone's life slide, and it's not meeting your expectations, clearly not meeting theirs. But at some point, hopefully there's a turnaround. And that's the point of time that is the most important. And when they're considering maybe getting sober or not, and you're considering getting help for yourself, they don't go hand in hand. You can get yourself better while your kid's not, or your kid can get better and you can continue to be a frantic, whatever, so-and-so, and try to run their lives. But there's recovery from both sides. And I truly believe that it's not just the child, the parent, the spouse. It's not the other person who needs to recover. It's everybody who is close and loving towards them. I'm going to turn over to Pam to give you some details about what we've gone through in our
Sure.
story.
Hi, everybody. I am Pam. It started 27 years ago. What I will say to you as a parent, and I think this is with anybody that has a person that they love who is so unhealthy, sick, and really struggling with this disease. And it is such a frustrating disease. It doesn't make any sense. It is very painful, very tough. The symptoms of this disease is lying, stealing, cheating. I mean, none of it makes sense. And it is absolutely terrifying. At least it was for me, because I know that people die from this disease. And in our case, we came very close with a couple of our kids of losing them. And that, as a parent, that's our bottom line. You want to talk about rock bottom? That is it. I mean, and I've had friends, God love them, that have lost, children from this disease. And they have so much courage, and they're amazing people, how they rise above it. What I will tell you is those parents that really spent the time figuring out how do I get myself whole? How do I get myself into a place that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay? And that takes us, Rick was kind of talking about this. How do I get happy, joyous, and free? I needed to figure out a different way of loving my kids, because the way I was doing it and loving them got me to this place where, I'm in the back of my closet upstairs in my bedroom. I'm rocking, and saying to myself, what didn't I do? Why, what didn't I say? Am I a bad mom? Why is this happening? Because I had a son that was in jail. I had another son that left the house and said, I love y'all, but you're crazy. And I had a daughter out using in the garage, and a husband down in the basement, drinking beer. And, and I was saying to myself, somehow this was my fault, right? And that was my bottom. And for me to understand, I need to do something different. I need to get myself some help, because I'm worthless to nobody. I had lost my relationship with my sisters, my parents. Nobody really understood what I was going through. So I always get this wrong. How many years ago do we start the parents? It was like 16 years ago. We were with actually a group of parents. Our youngest daughter was in treatment, and they had a therapist said, oh, we'll meet with you while your daughter's out there, in rehab, and, kind of work through stuff. And so we started doing that. And there were other parents, and I can't tell you, it was different than Al-Anon. One, because we could crosstalk, and kind of share, hey, this is what happens to me. Does this happen to you? Just, it's like with the alcoholics and the addicts will say one addict helping another. It was the same thing with the parents. It was one parent helping another parent. Oh my God, yes. I felt the same way, or I had the same thing happen. And we were lucky in that we had a couple of parents that were maybe 6 or 7 months ahead of us. And so their kid at the time was doing a little bit better. And we thought, oh my God, they were miraculous. It was actually working for them. And that hope was really important as well. And that was the genesis of it. As a matter of fact, the therapist had to leave. She moved to Delaware, and we all didn't want to stop. We said, well, we want to keep going. And so we did. And that's how we started, these parent groups. It started out with 8, and then it grew to 20, and then it grew to 60 and 90, and then they kept splitting and growing. And I think Kim showed you, we have a lot of parent groups every day of the week, almost. There is a group that you can join. And really what our goal is to help a parent in crisis. We are not the experts, but I tell you what, we are very resourceful, and we know who all the experts are, at least in this area. And then we can point you to people that may know. Yes, Rick is absolutely one of our top experts, and was there with us from the very beginning of these parent groups. So absolutely fabulous. But what we do with each other is we share, and we talk about things like shame and guilt and fear. And we talk about setting up boundaries and what that might look like. And we bring in experts to talk to us, about it. Or we might bring in a young person in recovery to talk about what it was like and how either the parents were helping us or not helping us. But for me, part of that journey was being able to start talking to people who understood where I was coming from. But I needed to get that extra help, to understand kind of why am I always blaming this on myself? And how do I get, some of these boundaries so that I can be supportive, I can be loving, but it's and I can start, not feeling guilty if I want to go out and have a movie date with my husband, or go out and go on a vacation somewhere. That, that was my goal, is to get my life back, is the way we used to, do that, whether my kid was okay or not. And really what we've have is a little bit of hindsight with our children, because our children are older. They're in their 30s and mid to late 30s for 2 of them. And, what they've said to us in the past is, seeing you moving on, seeing you kind of getting on with your life really helped me to understand, hey, this gig is up. Right. They're not, I'm not being that, person that they're always focused on, and, I'm getting what I want. It's like, things have changed. And it was truly when I started making some of those changes, learning what that love can be. No, that can be the most loving thing that I could ever say to my child. And it certainly, what we have found, at least in these groups and with these therapists, these words, how you say it, what words you have to use to say it is so helpful. Again, that's what I have found really, really helpful. And which is why this is such a passion for me. And I joined, Kim in building this network, because this parent support is so critical as we move forward. It was critical 10 years ago. It's critical now, right? And things change. And so having this network of parents and resources and people being in service and helping each other out is something that, we want to keep continuing. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting it. So
I keep hearing a lot of things that Rick said as well. And the isolation part is very important, because that's what Pam was describing. We were all 5 of us, we were in different places. We weren't a family anymore. And we were that perfect Disney World family, can't really say we'd be, Andy Mayberry, but we were pretty close and very wholesome. We did a lot of fun things together. And then things started to unravel, and we all went to our separate corners. In AA, there's a saying, you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. And I really, truly believe that. And I think it applies to your loved ones, and it applies to you. It's very hard to think yourself out of irrational thoughts, because that's what happens to us. Most of us do become irrational. And we forget how to model good behavior towards our children. And both of us were guilty of that, me on the one hand and her on the other hand, and reacting to things instead of responding to them, being able to think clearly before opening our mouths. And one of the big things that we do in the parent groups is we ask everybody, what are the things that you think you should stop doing? And what are the things that you should start doing? And we make lists of them and we talk about those things. And I guarantee you'll get thoughts and ideas and concepts will come to you that you never thought of before. And then you can either accept those things and take them home and try them out, or you can move on to something else. There's always something else to learn from the other participants in the room. We have old timers, as we call them, people who've been doing things for a long time, and they come and they still learn. We still pick up gems when we go there, and we have what we call a home group, and it's a small group of great people. And now that things are on Zoom, there's people from all over the place that are coming to us, and it's really opened up our eyes to the needs that it's not just in this area. There's a huge population out there that has no guidance and no support. I think that what was mentioned about the parent support groups is that it is a support group. It's not an Al-Anon or AA type meeting. We do a lot of crosstalk. We do a lot of other things there, sharing. So it's important for us to find something that's going to allow us to look at ourselves differently and then make the changes from there, whether it be parent support group, a spiritual support group, or with a therapist. And kind of frankly suggest that all three of those things are important in recovery. And recovery, unfortunately, is a long-term event. It's not a sprint. So things come slowly and you stick to them, and it requires work to recover. It's not fun to stop drinking and have to go through that. It's not fun, as Rick was saying, to hold the line with your kids on certain things, to speak your truth, to change your own behavior towards your child and how you talk to them, how honest you're going to be, and being congruent is difficult in the beginning, but it's so important to actually try to get there.
So I know we have some great questions. So I'd love to have maybe Kim, do you want to field some of those, and then Rick and us can, I think that's a great way to kind of get into the details. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to add something, just because you were talking about the group so much. And I know that there's a definite theme tonight of everybody talking about connection with Pam Bill, and that just last night, the meeting that I attend every Wednesday night is a HERO meeting, but we're still meeting on Zoom. But last night, in honor of our 10th anniversary, we got together in person. We had our masks on. But what was consistent as everybody checked in and shared was everything changed for me when I made this connection. When I walked into a room, just like the alcoholic, just like the person with an STD, and realized that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't alone, because, and I'm speaking from as a daughter of someone in recovery and mother of someone in recovery, particularly as a mother, parent, you really do put so much of it on. And to know, and also so much of this is counterintuitive to parenting. All of our nurturing, the way we've been nurturing since they came into our lives, now has to look a lot different. And once we were we can have the most supportive friends in the world. If they haven't been down this road, it's just not relatable for them. So to be with each other was tremendous. And it was an incredibly gratifying moment to hear that over and over again. And also would like to suggest to folks, I know a lot of times couples aren't on the same page in this journey. One might be a little further along, one might think the sky is falling, and the other one thinks, oh, come on, you're overreacting. Each of you finding your own meeting can be really effective, just so that you're not listening through the partner's ears, if you know what I mean. I hope you heard what she just said for you. And hopefully, and seek the help of somebody like Rick Shugart, for heaven's sake, because that's what my son's dad and I did. We went together to see Rick, or there are lots of other folks out there who can work with you professionally. Take the onus off yourself. If you're to convince someone of what you believe you're seeing in your loved one, go to a professional so that they can help you. Just hearing it from an objective third party can really, really be helpful. Okay, let's get to some of these really great questions. Boundaries. That is always when we have this survey that you'll see at the end, we ask what kind of topics you want in the future. This is pretty much always our number one response is help me with setting boundaries. Can you talk about that, Rick, and what that looks like? And Pam and Bill, you can jump in as well if you want.
Yeah, well, look, so the theme here, the first thing to do when we talk about boundaries is, what's helpful and not helpful. So it really requires the ultimate saying no. That's where it starts. Often the boundaries, especially with a kid or with a partner, is just saying no. No, I'm not giving you money. No, you can't live here if you're going to keep using and not pay rent. I'm not paying for college if you fail out again. No, I will not go to the store and pick you up some liquor. No, I'm not bailing you out of money because you spent all your, it starts with the word no, but there's so many forms of what a boundary is. There's a million of them, because there can be a boundary about bad behavior, the way you curse at me. It can be bad behavior of actively supporting you with money for your addiction. There can be boundaries. So it really starts with, always think of it as the word no, because there's a good chance I've been coerced into saying yes when I didn't want to. So that's the first thing with a boundary is, but I have to know which one's healthy for me and my family. It's not a cookie cutter rule, but it gets started saying no, being okay with them being mad at you.
Yeah. And, I know boy, do we talk about this a lot in the parent groups, because it's something that we all have to keep being reminded. The other thing I like to think about too with boundaries is, who are the boundaries for, right? And the answer, at least, for all of us, is it's everybody. It's not just your person. It's you too, right? And Bill, we like to describe it as thinking of a picket fence, right? Whether it's around you, around your home, around your life, but what part of that piece do you hold dear and you need to keep saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love how Rick was saying, if you notice, no, I can't do this. It's I statements. These are for me. Boundaries that we've talked about is I have to have honesty. I have to have respect, right? I mean, they can be this high, right? To start anyhow. And what that means and what that looks like with each family is the part that has to be teased out. And honest to God, that is where professional help can be great, but also other parents will share, what that meant. But the respect and the honesty and working in recovery. And that means me too. I got to be working towards my stuff. And that's a boundary that I'm working on. And, now that boundary is about me and my space. If they go off in their own space, like Rick said, I have no control over that. But in my space, whether it's me, my home, that is what's important to me. And they have a choice. You don't have to be in my home. You don't have to be in my space. But when you're with me, this is what's important. So no, I'm not going to talk about whatever. That's a boundary. It makes me anxious. Or for me, money was a thing. I don't know what it was. I just thought they were going to die or starve to death. So I was always wanting to give them money. So I finally had to say, hey, this has nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with me. I can't do the money conversation. So I need you to talk to dad, because that's my thing. That's my boundary. That's my stuff. I'm working on it, but that's where I am right now. I can't talk to you about it. That's the kind of thing that we talk about. And do you want to explain what is a boundary, right? Yeah.
Well, I can give you an example.
Mhm.
Pam was talking about money. I kind of like cars, and so you got to understand. I had two boys that were very close in age, and they're involved with a lot of sports and a lot of other activities. And in their teen years, they totaled 5 cars. And you know what I did?
The last car was totaled.
I bought them a 6th car.
Mhm.
I didn't have that. No, I would, whatever, I'd listen to them. I have to get to hockey practice. I have to get to my job. I have to get to, they're having a big party somewhere. And so, it was not good parenting is what it was. I need to put and be congruent, because I was worried about it. I knew that there was a risk. I knew that they might hurt somebody else, but I still got them another car.
Yeah.
So that's just not, boundaries are things that you can control in your life, and that inside that space, you want it to be there. And there are 3 that Pam and I have now, and they are
Honesty.
sobriety, honesty, and respect.
Both ways. Both ways.
Both ways.
Mhm.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. Rick said something about saying no, and you guys mentioned it too. And for me, that was such a scary thing. I always felt like if I said no to my son, I was going to make him want to go and get high, because I had fear. I had so much fear. And that's like a muscle you have to exercise and make sure that you get it. Because once I did it and realized, back to what Rick said about power and having control over someone else, I had no control over his use. Unless I was like injecting him with something, I was not going to be responsible for my son's relapse. And once I said no and found out that I wasn't going to change anything about his behavior as far as his substance use, that's when I finally learned that I had to set those boundaries for myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love this question. Is it possible to work on a relationship with someone who is still using substances?
The short answer is no and a little yes. So if they're actively using, we are still having a relationship. We're just having a dysfunctional one. Right. So I can't work on the deeper relationship about the things that require honesty, respect, clarity, making plans. If they're using, I can have a relation and work on it in being congruent and honest with you and telling you how I feel. That's working on the relationship. But I'm not going to have the parent adult child relationship I want if they're still using. And I'm not going to have the marriage I want if my partner's still using. We're still having a relationship. I can be honest with you. It might not always be pleasant. I can do self-care, but it's not the same as working on a relationship when 2 people can say with some clarity, here's the problem, here's why we're not getting along, here's how we talk to each other, let's work on it. So yes, you can work on it by, again, saying, but is it going to get better if they keep using? No. That's the short answer.
Right. And sometimes we've talked recently actually about this topic, and we talk about having a seat at the table, and especially for the young adults, where they're choosing to, we invited them not to stay or live in our house, right? But also having a seat at the table, meaning that you want to find a way, and this is different with every family, and you have to figure out what works for you. And certainly support groups can help you with that. Al-Anon can help you with that, and the other therapists on what that looks like. But the idea is that there is, that lifeline that's out there that says, but when you're ready, I'm here for you. I I want that relationship. I want to spend the time with you. It's just that right now, this is hard for me. It makes me not be able to sleep and think. And so, I need to take a step back and figure some things out. And I hope you do too. It's that kind of conversation. Those are the kinds of words that we're talking about that these experts can really help you with.
Yeah. Rick mentioned tough love. And there was a time, I think, in early parent groups, we used to talk about that, but now we try to talk about informed love. And it doesn't mean cutting somebody off. You want to keep open those lines of communication for as long as possible. And sometimes it means the lifeline is putting somebody else between you and them. So at least they have someone, if they get in trouble, they can call that person will call you. But the relationship part, I think, that was Rick's answer was spot on.
There are a couple of questions here. There's one specifically for Pam and Bill. When did you start moving on? When you started moving on, were your kids still living at home with you?
Some of them were. Yeah, some of them were. So there's a 5-year difference between our youngest and our oldest. So yeah, they were. And when I say moving on, one of the things that I find really interesting about learning how to lovingly say no and how loving that is the thing that will get an addict's attention is a change in your behavior. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, they got you, things are cool. Like Rick said, we're not, I'm good. They know, as soon as you start behaving differently and you start saying no, or hey, listen, it's not, this is my stuff. I can't do this anymore. They're like, what? So doing things like we're going to go out for dinner, we're going to go on this vacation, and, it's like, hey, they're not dancing around me anymore. Wait a minute, nobody's paying attention. That's a change in behavior. And so those kinds of things I think are important. But yeah, we did. We had at different times, God, I'll tell you what, we still have people coming and going in our house for different reasons. So yeah.
And I got to just point out something you said, when our timelines were different. And we had different things to work on. I decided to get sober, and we actually I could relate to my kids a little bit differently, and our relationship actually got better for a little while. Where Pam was still worried, and she would see us go off to meetings, and we were having a good time, laughing and meeting people, coming back, and she was like, she wasn't happy about that.
No, I've been the one that was dealing with all of this, and now they're all happy and I'm still unhappy. It's like, what's wrong with this picture? Right. So, yeah.
But but moving on is, I think, moving forward with recovery is doing the work of recovery. And once you make a decision on that and stick with it, it becomes an event that goes on for a long period of time. And, I don't know if that helps answer that question or not, but.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. You guys, we have so many great questions to get to. So I'm going to ask Rick to answer this one, which is awesome. How can you get your loved one to take part in meetings when they don't want to?
Well, there's two ways. One, if it's part of a contract after they came home from a treatment program, and they have agreed to it, and now they've stopped. Can you make them go to meetings? No. But again, you can be honest and say, look, you're not doing your part that you promised. And this is how it affects me. Doesn't give me much hope. Doesn't help me build trust. It makes me worried. And with a kid, it can be like, well, if you're not doing your part in recovery, because with a kid, when you're coming out of rehab, you're either doing your part in recovery or you're not. And then I'm going to support you with the next venture in your life, which will be car or school or college or something else. But if you're not doing your part, I'm not doing my part. With a partner, it's kind of different because I can't make you go to meetings, but I can tell you how it's affecting our relationship. And I'm going to continue to keep going to meetings for myself. And then again, if it's, with a kid, you have more power because I have some things that I'm willing to support you in if you're being honest and keeping your commitment. And with a partner, it looks different. I can just be very honest with you on doesn't give me much hope. And trust has been broken in this relationship. So, but again,
go
ahead.
I was just going to say, what if, because you could read that question a couple of different ways. Also, what if it is a mother and father with a son or daughter who's in early recovery, and that, like, let's say, for example, mom is trying to get dad to meetings. You understand what I mean? Like, so like if mom is going to her support group meetings because son or daughter is either in active addiction or early recovery and can't get her spouse to go to meetings with her or go to a support group meeting, can you convince another person who's, the family member to get help for themselves?
I yes and no. I mean, you can speak your truth. I need you to come. I can't solve this problem on my own. This is hurting our marriage. Come to me for a marriage session so we can talk about this. Hearing it from someone else, sometimes, we have a way of white noise with our partners. We don't hear everything until when someone else says it, it's now spoken and bear witness in front of someone else. So you can't, at the end of the day, no, you cannot make someone, but I can let you know how you not partake in this is affecting our marriage. And I'm going to continue about it, but yeah. So when we usually, can you make, already the answer is no. You can't make anybody do anything, but doesn't mean I can't speak my truth and let you know how it's going to affect us. Okay.
Right. Awesome. If the person with a substance use disorder is lying to you, do you call them out on it, or do you let it go to avoid conflict?
Absolutely call them out on it. Avoiding conflict means you're incongruent. It's a lie. You have that internalized feeling. You're angry inside. You ask them a series of more questions to hopefully they'll tell the truth. You are hurt. You feel disrespected, a whole bunch of things. And just putting my truth out there. Because what am I really avoiding? I'm avoiding they might blow up. They might get angry. They might storm out of the house. Maybe they'll go, storm out of the house and go drink. All that kind of stuff is the worry. But yeah, I'm calling my truth the truth, And if it doesn't solve anything, it makes me be more honest with myself, and it lets you know I don't fall for that stuff anymore. If that's all it accomplishes, that's still healthy.
And how you speak that truth is very important.
Yeah, because I like the I statements, man. The I statements are, it's really important. I'm feeling manipulated. I'm, feeling like, that, what's going on isn't cool. And it's got me upset. I need time, I'm backing out, for a little bit or, whatever that is. But, yeah, the I statements are really important. Not that you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anger will typically be met with anger.
Mm-hmm.
I found that out.
Right. Yeah. And if your loved one is lying to you, there's already conflict. So you're not really avoiding conflict by not talking about it. It kind of along those same lines, how do we rebuild our relationship with our son? Issues and he's great.
Could you say that again, Kim? I'm sorry.
Do you want to say it again? How do we rebuild our relationship with our son? There are trust issues, and I'm not sure he is in recovery.
Got it. So first thing is, at some point you have to let the person know if it's your son, whether you let them know when they were in treatment, if you were in a family session, or have a session with his therapist or a family session. You have to let him know how much trust was broken over the period of time before he got to rehab. And that trust doesn't come back overnight because you're sober a week or you're sober 2 weeks, but you don't like meetings anymore. The trust takes time. And I always say a nice framework is your parents are going to be, or partner is going to be suspicious and mistrustful for a minimum of a year. And that was caused by your behavior. Every therapist should be telling every client that, yeah, your partner's going to be suspicious here, and you help create that suspicion. Between all the lies, all the times you used and denied it, all the times you said, I'm broke because of something else and it was really drugs. There's a mistrust that's going to be there. So I put that out there. Even if your kids are doing everything right, I'm still going to be mistrustful. The first time you have a cold, I'm thinking, did he use last night? You know, if he happened to overspend and buy, you know, a bunch of clothes and doesn't have money, I might think, did he use drugs? My mind's going to go there, and that's okay. So I'm going to put out there that I'm going to be suspicious for a year, and we're going to have to build trust together. I also believe in the old saying, I'll trust but verify. I'm just not taking your word at everything, because you lied to me, I don't know what, 100, 1,000, 10,000 times? It doesn't go away overnight. So I let them, yeah, we can build trust, but it's a process. It's not an immediate thing.
Yeah. We even had a formula for that, which is time plus experience. That's not mine. I don't know if it was yours, Rick, or who it was that gave us that, but it's time, you know, where we're experiencing, you know, that person doing the next right thing. And I got to tell you, it goes both ways, right? You know, so time also with me not nagging and, you know, doing all of that, or, you know, whatever it was, the ish that I was doing, but that's the trust that we build with each other, right? Time of me not asking, what's your sponsor say? Did you go to a meeting today? You know, every day, right? You know, those are the kinds of relationship things that we're building and we're understanding. So it's time and, you know, of me experiencing those next right things is where we build, you know, trust.
Right.
Yeah.
We're anxious. Go ahead.
You try not to throw things back in their face. The fact that, you know, you can have that talk. I like what you just said. Just make them understand how they broke your trust in the past. Make sure they understand that in the beginning. But try very hard not to throw the past into their face during that period that you're trying to get the relationship back, because that just sets things in the wrong foot. Again, it's not only what you say, it's how you say it.
So I know a lot of parents can get anxious, or partners, if they stop, their treatment starts to wane. They're not going to as many meetings. They're not talking about it. Are they on the right path? Or are they just dabbling with like a whole series of things can happen. And, you know, how do I talk about one of the questions about my kid in recovery? You're entitled to ask, open-ended, how's recovery going? And, you know, in the beginning, they'll tell you, oh, it's good, this and that. And later on, when they start to say nothing, you're going to say, like, you know, when you say nothing, that starts to build with the mistrust, because I think like you're not motivated, you're not energized by it. And it's still your path. You'll either keep going on it, or you won't, or you'll use. But I already know my boundary, what I'm doing if we go down that path again. I'm not doing this twice. But you're allowed to ask about someone's recovery, not daily, not even weekly. I always say maybe 2-3 times a month. I can say, how's recovery going? If we're in family therapy, we can save it for there, and I can coach your kid. Like, you share what's comfortable. It's not about a checklist. And you're entitled to say, I don't like that question, but we're allowed to talk about our recovery. And you're allowed to ask. So I know that was one of the questions. How do I ask about it? Because really, if you're asking, it's to reduce your own anxiety.
Right.
Oh, he's going to meetings, he's hanging with a recovery friend, he has that sponsor. Okay. And that's nice, but that's not a guarantee either. You know, many people tell you, parents have had kids go through recovery, dabble, experiment, do okay for a long period, and then get back into it, and then they're ready for recovery in a different way. And so I want to throw that out there, that you're entitled to ask. I saw that as one of the questions. Go ahead, Kim.
Right. Yeah, I was just getting, there's this question for you. Is it ever appropriate to stop communicating with a child who says he is in recovery, yet is manipulating others to get what they want, and the lies are extremely about the family?
Yes, it is appropriate. But again, if I'm a straight shooter, I'm going to tell you, like, look, I know you've been lying and manipulated. I'm not doing this anymore. When you're ready to be honest with me, I'll talk, but I'm not engaging with this. And then you have your boundary where I'm not just blowing up and giving you the cold treatment. I'm not saying, you know, oh, you're nothing but a liar and that's it, I shut down. I'm going to tell you why I'm not engaging, because I know you've lied or you're not being honest. But if I'm having that conversation, we might be ready for the next conversation. Like, I don't know if living together is going to work. Like, that might not be far behind, because I don't want to live. If you're truly in recovery and still lying, this isn't working either. But I'm always about honesty, what's working and what's not. And kids live together with parents longer than ever, and that expiration date often passed a long time ago.
Yep.
So.
Here's another question for you. Our loved one seems to be in a better place at the moment. I'm afraid to get involved or allow myself to be too happy. And Rick, this is perfect for you. You have a program called Addicted to Hope, right?
Yeah, Addicted to Hope, where, yes, I am, but you're allowed, if we keep it one day at a time, and I'll borrow from 12 steps, you're allowed to be happy today. Today, nobody's using, nobody lied today. They did something in recovery. I'm allowed to be happy today. I just can't be Pollyanna and think they're cured. But afraid to get involved, again, that just goes, I'm going to be cautious till they get a year under their belt. The whole goal of recovery is to get, the first goal and only goal is go through the 4 seasons of life. Then I can breathe. I know you're capable of being sober a year, so you could be capable for long-term sobriety, but that first 4 seasons, yes, as a parent or a loved one, I am cautious. We have to get through every holiday, every event, every weather without using, and see how it goes. But you're allowed to be happy for the moment. Just keep it simple today.
Yeah. I would say, please be happy in this moment, in this day, because I don't care how long it's been, a year, 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter. And I want to say, in life, there is no guarantees, period. Right. This is probably when Bill said, things are better than ever for us right now, because I really did learn about what it means to be present. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody walks in the door and today is a good day and there's a smile on their face, or I had a great day, I will enjoy it, damn it. And I will enjoy every second of it, because I know that things can change. Right. And when, especially early in recovery, getting involved really truly means get yourself in recovery, whatever that looks like. So we talked to you about the support groups, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, their church, whatever it takes to get you outside of your head and start looking at, how can I, get into a healthier place? How can I change my thinking? So that it's not driving me crazy and worrying about that next shoe dropping. I'm not going to say that there'll be no more pain in your life, but Al-Anon has even shared this, but there doesn't have to be any more suffering. And that's the difference, because now you have a network of people that you didn't have before. So it will never be that bad as it was the first time you were dealing with this. And you also have a lot of great connections and resources. So that's going to be important, I think.
I can safely say that our best friends are people who are in recovery.
Yeah.
We've met on this journey, and we love them.
And the idea of being too happy, I do a lecture on Addicted to Hope, is that I get so happy thinking they're in recovery. I want to give everything back, as opposed to good for their development is to earn things back, and sometimes on their own. But I want to say, sober, here's the car again. Let's go back to college. Let's do this, and don't pay bills and study for school. And all of a sudden, I'm not doing things that helps them with their character, let alone recover. So that kind of happy you want to be worried about too.
Agreed. Absolutely. And we've all made that mistake. How many times? How many cars? 5, 6, whatever. We could all raise our hand around a room one time asking, how many times do people think everything was great? Let's send them off to college. And it was a total disaster. So I agree. I think that's where we look to the experts, right? And that's one of our messages, is we need to we are not the experts. We need to trust the folks that do understand, that do know, and we follow them.
So we have some interest in your lecture, Addicted to Hope. Is that something that you have on the horizon, Rick, or should we talk?
As soon as we can do, well, I would like to do that one in person if we get there. I don't know what the future's going to hold, but yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that, and stay tuned. And who asked about that? Can I ask you guys?
If you get a chance to see Rick in person, take it. It's a part show as well. It's very, very well delivered. So
Yes. He holds his own on Zoom here.
Yep, he does.
One final question. This is really just talking to extended family.
You're breaking up, Kim.
I know they're able and stay. Hear that question? Talk to family about your love of substance.
That was about telling the extended family about the person who has addiction.
Yes. Yes. Right. So how to have that conversation. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about my responses? Usually when somebody brings this up, you kind of know who you feel comfortable with in your inner, start with somebody that you're really, really close to and sort of try that out. If you've just become aware of this or your loved one just went to treatment or whatever that looks like, choose somebody that you really feel safe with to tell something this, kind of monumental in your life and try that on for size before you kind of express this to the rest of the family. But do you all have any thoughts about that, about the healthiest way to go about sharing that information, how much to share?
Yeah, I know that we've talked about this and I agree. I think it's important that you do share with someone because, what is it that, family secrets keep families sick, right? So having a way to come up and be honest about what's going on. I think it's fair to say that it's about what you're dealing with and how you're handling it and pointing people towards great education about the disease model and understanding that. But I don't think it's appropriate to share all the horror stories, if there are horror stories. I think that's not, ours to share, right? We can talk about where we're coming from and what we're doing and certainly, what's going on with our family, but I think that's going to be very important for all the family members, that piece of information or details aren't shared, to that level.
I would say that's a great, Brahma. I can always share about what I'm going through, but addiction, if our kid had a different illness, we would definitely share about it because there's not shame about other illnesses. And you certainly in a family, you want to pick and choose who you already know you can confide and trust and betray. I'm not telling my aunt who's the blabbermouth, and I'm not telling cousins who will throw it in your face on Facebook. I mean, there is some privacy, but I will definitely confide in people so that I'm not lying to them and avoiding and having a disconnected relationship with the people I love. And do I have other family members who also deal with this? Alcoholism runs in families, so it's not too far-fetched to have a sister who deals with her daughter, so it's not a cookie cutter answer, but definitely you're entitled to share with people you love and trust, family and or friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can always talk to us.
Yes.
So I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you, Rick, so very much. Thank you, Pam and Bill. We love you to pieces. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. Be safe and have a beautiful sunshiny rest of the long weekend here. We'll make it a long weekend. Tomorrow's Friday, I know, but it's going to be a gorgeous day, so enjoy it. Thank you for being with us. Check out, take the survey, please, and check out that follow-up page, conversation.zone/parents. Tomorrow morning, it should be loaded up there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.